Hey guys, Welsh Pixie here, and I've got another Starbound Q&A for you. This is an unofficial question and answer session from the IRC live chat. This is with Ty and Ro. Though they're providing this information, it is subject to change before the game comes out, so just keep that in mind. This isn't set in stone stuff, it's just some questions that they were answering in the live chat. And this is in response to the shield information that they put out, combat with shields. So one question is, will there be unblockable attacks and or attacks that you won't be able to shield, Ty? And Ty answers, yes, there will. He said he wants to slow the game down a bit more than the usual platformer also. He'd like the combat to be more methodical and thoughtful than run and gun. Dr. Ragnarok asks, any chance that shields will be used to push an enemy backward? I like when you get that distancing mechanic. And Ty says, if shields pushed enemies back, you wouldn't be able to counter-attack them, though. I mean, maybe we could make that an optional button you hold to make the shield do that. It's an interesting idea. So I asked, does methodical and thoughtful also apply to multiplayer? For example, CAG has the shield mechanic, but with so many people playing together, everyone tends to button mash. And Ty says, methodical and thoughtful will scale with multiplayer. Something he's really trying to do, and part of that is slowing the game down. He'll be giving players a role to play in a team. He doesn't want to say classes because there won't be classes. Gronis then asks, can your shield protect you from blows to the back, or do you have to turn around and face the correct direction? And Ty says, you have to face the correct direction. One of the choices you have to make is, should I be an all-rounder or should I be one component in a team, he says. For example, you could equip lots of healing items and armor that gives you healing bonuses and play as a healer. It's not a class, but the role is there. So Ty, somebody says, so roles are based off gear worn instead of skills and attributes, and Ty says, yep. Then Naturally Made asks, so basically there's equipment that you can have to act as a class, but no predefined classes. And Ty replies, he doesn't like the idea of sticking a role to a player because he thinks it's just an artificial way of making the player play the game again. He doesn't want players to switch rapidly between classes, and by that he means he doesn't want a player to have 5 different armor sets in their inventory and flick between them. So 1 second there's a healer and then the next they're a tank. So Ty's solution is making playing a role require a lot of items. So you'll need to stash your other items back at base. So effectively you can bring a new build to each planet. Somebody asks, is there something in-game to sneak like rogues in World of Warcraft? And Ty says you can crouch in Starbound, so crouching behind cover is a tactic. And then somebody asks, what about implementing cooldowns on armor equipping and slower equipment switching? And Ty says he thinks cooldowns are just kind of annoying personally. He says it works, but it's something the player shouldn't have to consider. And he goes on to say he wants prepping for a planet to be a big part of the game. Somebody asks, I know you don't want to release any boss info yet, but are you thinking about making large-scale team bosses? And Ty says, can't talk about bosses too much yet, but they will be there and they will be fun. And Lady Aiju asks Ty, what kind of storage capacity are we looking at? And Ty says, player storage is small, but implemented in a unique way. So that's interesting. Somebody jokingly says, microtransactions, 50 cents per slot, and Ty says, no microtransactions, so yay! And then he says, I'm sorry if I'm not answering everyone, sometimes I have to keep up, and there are things he doesn't want to discuss yet because they're still experimenting with features on some things, and he doesn't want to say, hey, yeah, this is going to be like X, and then when we're done, it's like Y. So all this information that I'm reading out to you in the Q&A is, again, subject to change. Somebody else asked, the reason I asked about storage, though, is just that with the sheer amount of available loot, players are going to want to collect, and if your inventory is very limited, it's going to force people away from that. And Ty says collecting is a big part of the game, and they're putting in all sorts of things to encourage that. They're trying to find a balance between allowing players to collect everything they want to collect and not allowing them to have access to everything at once. So that's interesting. What else do we have here? Somebody made a thread about the devs having their own planet and having a presence literally in the game, like how the Ancients are in Stargate. And Ty says, that would be a fun idea. He says he'd be like a level 1 piglet called Ty. Yay! Naturally Made says, Ty, if by tactical you mean not just running across the planet swinging your sword killing slimes, I'm in. And Ty says, well, the strategy he hopes to get in revolves around team synergy, good movement and placement, and using the right tools at the right time. An example might be, let's say you have a team made up of 2 ranged soldiers and a support medic. The support medic tosses down a force field that boosts the power of the soldiers' guns if they shoot through it, that kind of thing. He's basing this on roleplay games he used to play, stuff like Guild Wars. Somebody says, how is the multiplayer going to be? Do you need to invite people to your single-player world, or do you need to start a server and that stuff? And Ty replies, at the moment, multiplayer revolves around space stations. When you start a new game, you start a new space station. You can invite players to that station and visit worlds together. A server hosts a station save, and the server will have options for allowing character imports from local files or forcing players to start a new character on the server. Somebody else asks, what kind of things will large public servers have to protect against things like griefers? This is an interesting question. Ty replies, griefing will be much less of an issue in Starbound. The space station is essentially not griefable. There will be an option to disable things like explosive on homeworlds. And regular planets you won't really care so much about. He wants each planet to be a throwaway experience, not something you become attached to. That way he can do all sorts of hilarious things with planets, he says. And somebody replies, the worst thing about that is that some people will find a way to cheat or grief items, which won't happen if every save file is going to be saved on a cloud service. And Ty says they're considering the whole login deal. It's a complex thing to set up, but it can be quite costly. He says he thinks the most important thing is making sure cheaters don't ruin other people's fun and their experience. He says it's not a huge deal if they want to ruin their own. Somebody asks, will shields be procedurally generated as well? And he replies, yep. What else do we have here? Some of the screenshots that you may have seen released about the game have different interfaces on them. Like some have got the hotbar on the right. Somebody asked if that's customizable, and Ty replied it's because they've updated it a few times. So they are working on getting a good UI system in the game. Somebody says, are you looking at possibly having cast time or charge time based weapons, like an energy cannon that takes 2 seconds to fire? And Ty says yes, there are going to be all kinds of crazy weapons and tools in Starbound. Makes him even more excited to think about it. There'll be tools that are useful in combat, for example. Gornis says, will monsters and enemies take falling damage? And he says, we haven't discussed falling damage yet. They probably will. There's no falling damage in the game at the moment, but they need to implement it, and he doesn't see why they would limit it to players. Somebody else says, some mobs have natural shields, right? Why not natural anti-fall damage bodies? And Ty says, well, sure, some mobs can fly, etc. Somebody asks, is the currency called pixels? And Ty says, yes. So the currency in the game is pixels, which is fun. And then Ty says, so another question for people in the chat. Enemies don't hurt you untouched, as he said elsewhere. You can walk up to them and take no damage, and they have to hit you. And then he asked, do we think that we should be able to walk through them? And most people said no, and then this is where Ro joins the chat, and he says that's what they are thinking too. If you can walk through them, that means that you can be creative and say enemies that are asleep, you can sneak past. So enemies only damage you on touch if they're aggressive, and neutral-friendly enemies you can walk by just fine. That way you can still have friends, and everybody loves friends. Naturally Made says, Ro, yes, and say like lizard enemies, if you steal their eggs, they attack. And Ro replies, yeah, a creature I've recently made. I made 2, one big, one small, and it's going to have lots of small ones around it. And if you mess with any of the small ones, the big one will mess you up. So that sounds fun. So Ty said this is the system he's considering at the moment. Enemies have a line of sight, which is already in the game, so they can see you and become aggressive. When an enemy is aggressive, you can't just walk by them, they push you back. But if you have the correct stealth items, you can hold shift, which makes you walk, and is already implemented to go into sneak mode, in which case you can walk right by an enemy if the sneak items are good enough. So that sounds fun. And somebody asks, will sneaking carry over into PvP combat? They've already said that there are going to be asteroids in the game that function as PvP arenas. And Ty says, sneaking in PvP, who knows? Lady Aiju asks, Ty, sounds good as far as enemies, but how does that change with passive creatures, like things you'd be trying to catch, for example? And Ty replies, he thinks you should be able to walk past passive creatures. And then somebody asks, what gave you the idea of having multi-platform? Because he must tell you the Mac portion will bring a 14 to 15% increase. That's the one of the users saying. And Rose says it's already multi-platform. It'll be released on PC, Mac, and Linux. So that's cool. And then let's see what else. They talk about gravy and pies and vegetarian stuff there. And then they go into, is there going to be a mechanic for crew followers for people who want to play single player but still want to hit some of the harder group type missions, quests, planets and encounters? Or will the group based stuff not show up in single player? And Ty replies, I think we're going to scale the difficulty based on the number of players. So that's cool. If you're playing single player, you should still have a deep experience. And then somebody asks, Ty, can you answer the food meter question? It's been a big argument on the forums now for a while. And Ty says, I think food meters are atrocious. And Ro also says food meters are ridiculous. They say they've never seen a game implement a food meter that wasn't anything but irritating. The most food should do is maybe heal a bit of health, maybe some other buff for certain foods. Jeremiah asks, Ty, a quest going to be procedurally generated as well? Are there a limit to the NPCs you can find? And Ty replies yes and no, so that's mysterious there. Delbro says, Ty, will there be cooking and alchemy? And Ty replies, there's no alchemy, but there's something we haven't announced yet, he says, sticking his tongue out. So that's something we can look forward to. And Zolan says, how do quests work with multiple players on the server? I'd assume there'd be some sort of status console on the space station that shows the station's current quests, and that way everyone can participate. And Ro says, Zolan, we're looking at doing that. Some kind of central status thing on the station that tracks what and where everyone is. And Ty says he wants quests to be per person though, so kind of like how Borderlands does it, you just take the same quest. And somebody says, hey Ty, please do not put durability into this game. And Ty and Ro say, durability sucks too, they don't like durability. Because then you just spend half the game obsessively repairing everything to 100%. It's lame, time sink grind, blurg, says Ty. John DeVince says, Ty, are you implementing mini-games? And Ty says, I'm not sure if you would call them mini-games, but there will be arenas and a bunch of other stuff. And then Ro says, now I want to add a Thunderdome to the space station. 2 men enter, 1 man leaves. And then Lady Aiju says, Ty, can we quick share a quest with other players so that they can just click to join the quest? And Ty replies, the way it's going to work at the moment, although I might change it, he says, is quests are assigned to a party and rewards are assigned to a player. And he wants NPC dialogue to be in speech bubbles. So that's interesting. And the speech bubbles will be able to be seen by every player, he says. Then they talk about voice acting, and Ty says he's aiming to do a special made-up language like how it works in The Sims. And the idea will be you have a translator device. And then they talk about getting a bunch of people for doing sound clips, so that's also something fun. And dialogue options, somebody's asking, will players have dialogue options, or are they just going to click an NPC and get chat bubbles of text? So, let's see. Probably not dialogue options, Ty says, just an option to accept or decline quests. And then John DeVince says, Ty, shouldn't the effect of how long you took to finish a quest make the quest NPC give less reward? And Ty says, nah, he doesn't want to rush players. So that's it for this Q&A. I'll put the link to the paste bin so you can see the chat log in the video description. And join community.playstarbound.com for the forums. And most of these unofficial random Q&As happen in the live chat. There's a live chat link on the main website, so do be sure to pop in. They happen very randomly, so if you hang around a lot, you'll probably catch one at some point. So that's a bunch more information about the game, and I hope to see you on the site. Bye!